Welcome to Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. I'll be your moderator. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. Well, true to form, we get experts that are interest to the taxpayer, and this is no exception. Our guest is Eric Eisenhammer. Eric has been very active with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, and he also owns an outfit called Dauntless Communications. Eric, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you're becoming an old friend now. You've been to our barbecues. This is your second time you've been on our Taxpayer Alert.
And I'm going to be at your next barbecue.
Yeah, and the next barbecue. And you're going to be one of our speakers.
I am.
Yeah, this is cool. Now, tell us a little bit about yourself. How do you get involved with this stuff?
Well, I'm from Southern California originally, and I've always been pretty politically conservative. Although, to be honest, I was not all that fiscally conservative when I was in college. And but I cared about politics. I followed it. And I'm from Thousand Oaks, specifically, where Tom McClintock is from. So he was my representative then, as now. And he was running for governor back then, so that's why I was inspired to get involved. He was saying all things I agreed with. At that time, I was, 18, 19. I didn't even know that he was my representative, but I looked him up because he was running for governor, and he was the one that I agreed with.
Yeah, he should have won.
He should have.
Yeah.
Totally agree. He was an awesome candidate, and I still looking back think that had everybody that truly wanted to vote for him had actually voted for him, he probably would have been governor, and I think our state would be so much better had that happened. But that's how I got involved in politics. Still didn't think I would wind up doing this, 14 years later or whatever. But Tom was inspiring to me. He's a man of courage and principle, and honestly, even though since then I've met so many political leaders, Tom is still, probably the smartest or one of the smartest I've ever met. So that's how I got involved. A little later on after college, went to work at the Capitol, and that was an interesting experience. Those people at the Capitol think they're very, very important, and
sound like a politician.
Exactly, yeah. They think they're very, very important, and they think everything they do is a very, very big deal. And I wasn't really feeling it, but I worked there for a year, and then I went to work for Howard Jarvis, and I sort of found what is my, thing that I still do now, and do it for Howard Jarvis and do it for other campaigns, is I'm good at working on campaigns. So I got involved in campaigns. I enjoy it. And I work on, center-right campaigns for pro-business, against policies that would kill jobs, against policies that would raise our taxes. And I've worked for a number of politicians you've probably seen on the ballot representing the pro-taxpayer, pro-small business perspective.
Wow. Do you have family?
I don't have any family of my own yet, but mostly I work. Mostly I have the business. I have Dauntless Communications, and that's been, for the most part, that's been my life, is working on politics, working on these kinds of small business efforts that I do. And as you know, being a small business owner in California, it's you work an 80-hour week, and then the government comes and they take all the money you made, and sometimes you question why you live in this crazy state and why you're even trying to run a business when you have neighbors that just sit around and collect welfare all day because they have glaucoma or whatever.
Yeah.
But for some reason, maybe I have a screw loose, but that's what I do.
Now, what does Dauntless Communications do?
We do political campaigns, for one.
Okay.
So we work on, like I said, politically conservative, small business, pro-taxpayer campaigns. We also build websites, and I've always had that skill since college. And we build websites, sometimes for political campaigns, but also for dentists, for doctors, for small businesses of all kinds. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of our business. I'm proud of the work that we do. I'm a believer that one should offer their clients way more than they expect. And I'm critical of our state, but honestly I'm critical of what I see in the work ethic of our society right now as well. And I think that, too many people are lazy, too many people think they're entitled, because it's not easy and nobody promised you anything, nobody owes you anything. But if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to give people beyond what they expect and beyond what they, beyond just the idea of fair exchange, I think that at the very basis, you go to a restaurant and you order ham and eggs, they should give you ham and eggs.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even get that.
Where's the meat?
Sometimes you got soggy ham and eggs and you waited for an hour, right? So that's not the kind of exchange you want either.
Right.
But what I aim for is, I call it exchange in abundance, which is, you're the restaurant and you give the people some more food than they expected. You're taking interest in them. You're friendly. They get it faster than they expected. So that's what I try to do with my business. I try to not just meet expectations, but exceed them in terms of a good price and a good product.
Do you have a website?
We do. Daycom.us.
Now, did you have your pencil? Daycom.us. Is that correct?
That's right. It's spelled DACOM.us.
Oh.
Yeah.
DACCOM.
Yeah, DACOM. You could pronounce it DACOM too.
All right. Well, that's great. So now, what's the most? Well, I guess the most important thing is the government just proposed a record $214 billion budget, and what's happening with our state budget?
$214 billion. That's a record amount of money. It's been growing exponentially. For years. As a McClintock for governor supporter, I remember our dismay, and McClintock talked about this, our dismay at seeing spending increase not just as fast as it did under Gray Davis, but even faster. And then Governor Brown continued that legacy, and Governor Newsom is continuing it as well. $214 billion. We're among the highest taxed people in America. Right now, gas prices are over $4 a gallon. People in Arizona are paying $2-something. So we're paying so much in taxes that I feel like it's an appropriate question, but they always say they need more money. They always say they need more money for the children and for the environment.
And the roads.
And for the roads,
Yeah.
Exactly. So it is not an inappropriate question for us to question, where does any of this go? Well, one thing we do at Dauntless Communications for Howard Jarvis is we put together something called the Follow the Money Report. Okay. We've been doing this for a number of years. People can find it on the HJTA website under Studies and Reports. We issue a new one every year, and we put them out on tax day because that's the time that people are thinking about how much money they pay in taxes.
Now, that'd be hjta.com?
No, .org.
.org.
Yeah.
Erase that. Change it to .org. All right. You're clued in.
HJTA.org, Studies and Reports is where you can find it. And it just lists billions of dollars of examples of waste, fraud, and abuse in our state government.
Right.
We get one of the worst bangs for the buck in terms of our taxpayer dollars in the country. And that's actually been measured. There's actually been studies on that. It's not just my opinion. Some of the examples from the last one were $4 billion in Medi-Cal overpayments to people who did not qualify for Medi-Cal. Got $4 billion. That's almost as big as the gas tax, that amount of waste. There was also a tax system they created that they spent $290 million on that doesn't work. And then there was another one where the city of LA bought $10 million of electric BMWs that they rarely use. And there was one of my favorite examples, even though it's comparatively a lot smaller than the 4 billion, but there's a bus that the California Air Resources Board commissioned. It's a green bus, environmentally friendly bus. It doesn't work. So basically it's become a home for a possum. So a possum lives in it. It's just been put somewhere. There's a possum living it. This possum got $1 million home. And the California Air Resources Board, for their part, they were questioned about this, and they said that it was a good thing because now they know that what they did didn't work.
Well, also they provided a home for a possum.
That's right. Yeah.
That's
really nice home.
That's environmental.
That's true. Yeah.
So now they need to.
Although it's not a native habitat, so you know what I'm saying. So I don't know.
Well, they have to put some branches and leaves and things in there.
Yeah, they got to make it at least feel legit, you know.
You know, wouldn't it be great if these examples were widely known by the taxpayer?
And I believe that's a really important part of the conversation. And honestly, you know, other than doing things like what we're doing right now, you know, talking about and spreading the word, I do wonder sometimes, and it can be a little discouraging. This is the kind of thing that makes me want to move to Idaho and open a hardware store. Because you watch things like Jimmy Kimmel, and they interview the people on the street, or guy that I like, Mark Dice, he does all these also man on the street videos. And, you know, they ask people things like, so, do you support the Beyonce plan to bomb North Korea? Do you think that we need to get on board with Beyonce? She must know best, right? And people are like, yeah, I think that, yeah, if Beyonce thinks so, yeah, it must be right. That sounds like
fake news.
No, there's no Beyonce plan to bomb North Korea, but you know, they ask people this stuff, and they will agree with it. So that's the like, you know, information level of so many people in our society. So I think that's why this stuff is able to go on, because they're completely uninformed, and all they're paying attention to is celebrities. So it's very frustrating.
I can only watch the news for a limited amount of time because I'm very careful to keep my attitude positive. And it's really hard to watch the news and maintain a positive attitude.
I made a meme. It's just me personally. I'm not speaking for Howard Jarvis. I'm not sure that they necessarily would agree with this, but in my opinion, personally, I made this meme. It was like the newsman from the Muppets, and it said, in today's news, here's some stuff we made up to scare you so you'll watch.
I think John Stossel would like to hear about that.
I think he would agree, yeah. I think he would.
Okay, now one of the biggest jobs you've been working on is trying to protect Prop 13. What is the status of that now?
Well, fortunately, we still have Prop 13, and Prop 13 is still extremely popular. So that's the good news. The bad news is that, first of all, in the legislature, there are numerous bills to chip away at Prop 13, and that's some of those are pending right now. HJTA sends out email updates about those and encourages people to call their representative. But really the elephant in the room right now, as relates to Prop 13, is the split roll proposal. So that will appear on the ballot in 2020. We will vote on this. This is a $10 billion tax increase. It would eliminate Prop 13 protections for small business owners who own their property. I'm actually one of those people. I just bought a property. I got a great deal on it. It was a sort of a dumpy building on a great street, great high visibility street in Roseville that had fallen into disrepair and had been abandoned for a few years. And I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and do some work myself. So I bought this building. I've been working on it for the last few months. Dauntless is getting ready to move in. We're probably moving in next week. So people like me who own the building, you know, would be directly impacted. But then also people who rent their space from somebody else, you know, that landlord, that person who owns that commercial building is going to raise their rent because the money needs to come from somewhere.
Right.
Sometimes I think tax raisers don't fully realize that the money that they're taking from us comes from somewhere, and as less money we have for our staff, for creating jobs, for growing our business, for reinvesting the money.
And then the business, because they have to pay higher rent to the landlord that has this new tax put on them, then they have to charge more for the products and the food and everything else that they sell.
You know, and one of the examples of that is similar, a little bit different, but really that same idea of consumer product costs going up is also food. So farmers would be impacted by this. And farmers are already shutting down left and right. You know, they say that you can't move a farm. Well, that's true, technically, but I've spent a lot of time in Nevada, and they've pointed out to me the dairies that have moved from California to Nevada and where they are.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah, if you drive, I was in Reno for
So you
a
just got to
while.
buy the land and move the cows.
Yeah, exactly. They buy the land and move the cows. That's exactly what they do. And Nevada's got no state income tax, so you can move a farm. And they are moving farms right now.
Wow.
Or, and this is the other aspect of that, or they have to raise the price.
Yeah. The public, this is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is a property rights issue and a taxpayer issue.
Yeah.
So regardless of what political party a person is or belongs to, this will affect you. So you need to make sure that while we do need taxes for things, important things, but we can't be abused. Taxpayers cannot be abused because it hurts everybody.
And I think that really goes back to that Follow the Money report and the examples of how they spend our money. You know, I've always believed that that's a great resource for people to share, you know, on social media, to share with friends and neighbors, because this was something that I created at the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association because two reasons. One being that when I first started there 10 years ago or so, a dude called, and pro-tax dude, and he goes, you know, you say the taxes are too high, and you say that they waste our money, but you never give any examples, and I'm against what you guys are doing because, you know, I care about our roads and the children and blah blah blah, and you know, it really made me think because I knew I already had worked there long enough to have heard some examples here and there, but they weren't really in any format that was shareable.
Right.
So, and that was also for me personally. Like I said, I wasn't really a fiscal conservative when I first got involved in politics. My mom voted for Prop 13, but my mom was a Democrat. And my mom was much more inclined than I've become to vote for tax increases. And the reason being not that she would support, you know, a tax increase if the government did not need the money, but she was definitely open to the idea that, well, we could pay more if it was really needed. And that's where I came at Follow the Money, was saying, well, I feel like this is an important question for us to examine, that do they actually need the money? When they come to us and they say, hey, you know, we want the children to have, a pony, and you need to pay more taxes, to give this child a pony, and if you don't pay this, like, you greedy person, you.
Right.
And it made me think. I was like, well, do they really even need more money? Do they have the money to conceivably buy children a pony without raising our taxes? And they absolutely do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they should buy a bunch of ponies, but I am saying if they wanted to, if they quit wasting so much money, they could probably buy all the ponies in the world.
Well, that goes back to the gas tax, in which they wanted to raise taxes to repair roads, but they already had money to do that, and they spend that money on something else.
There's a couple $1 billion, $1 to $2 billion, I can't remember the exact number, transportation office building somewhere in the Bay Area that they built. You know, they try to tell us that the bridges there are crumbling, and I'm not saying they're not, but they still had $1.5 billion or so for their own offices. You know, at the Capitol, they're going to spend $800 million. You know that new part of the Capitol? So if you go to the Capitol, there's the old traditional Capitol, and then there's this office building that's part of the building, but was built much later, built maybe in the 50s or 60s. Well, that part of the Capitol, that's where the politician offices are. They want to knock that down and rebuild it and make it just much more beautiful and much nicer. And they're going to spend $800 million on that. And nobody's really questioning whether that's appropriate.
Wow. I wonder how many taxpayers know about that.
Because, you know, it's like, I'm not saying that, I don't know, if there's just tons of money, maybe the politicians could have nice offices. I don't really know how I feel about that. I don't really feel like they've earned nice offices. But, you know, when they're trying to tell us we have this situation where the bridges are going to collapse, and then they're spending almost $1 billion to build fancier offices for themselves, that's certainly something that doesn't look so good. And like you said, you know, honestly, probably most people don't know about that. And then one other example, I just want to share this because I saw this the other day. Speaking of their offices, one of our state officials, the Secretary of State, I can't remember her name, but I think it's the Secretary of State. This lady, she's getting ready to receive $300,000 of new furniture that's being paid for by the unions.
How does that work?
So you can create, this is legal, it doesn't seem like it should be legal, but it is. She created like this special nonprofit or whatever that's like, it's got a nice name, but it's like the Buy Me Furniture nonprofit. So the union interests are putting $300,000 into that entity, and then that entity is buying her furniture.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's almost like the Clinton charity.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because, you know, those unions, of course, will never want anything from her. You know, they're just nice people, and they're just buying her new furniture out of the goodness of their hearts.
Oh.
And if they do that, like, I need furniture. I mean, you know, if unions just give people furniture out of the goodness of their hearts, you know, I bought a whole new building. I definitely could use some furniture. So
right.
if they're out there, they're watching somewhere, and they're just giving away nice furniture, you know, I'd be happy to take some, but they haven't offered.
Now we have a choo-choo train in California.
We do? Well, kind of. Not really. We kind of have a idea, and we got a little bit of track.
All right. Now that started off. They got a bond issue. Is that correct?
That's right.
And what was the amount that was estimated?
It was somewhere around 40 billion, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And that was supposed to be, this is what we approved, we the voters. We approved a $40 billion train, and that money was supposed to come a third from the state, a third from California taxpayers, a third from the feds, and a third from private investors. Well, no private investors have wanted to put any money into this thing. The feds recently said that they were going to give $1 billion, and now they're not going to give it anymore. So the state, though, is still proceeding to build this thing anyways. But the total amount of money that we're on the hook for, because remember, we were on the hook, we California taxpayers were on the hook for a third of 40 billion, so like 15 billion or so. Now we're on the hook for the whole thing, but now it's not 40 billion anymore. Now it's like 80 billion. Some people say it could be as high as 200 billion. And to add insult to injury, you know, this is a little bit like, you know, if you went to the restaurant and ordered pie, but instead of giving you pie, they punched you in the face. Because to add insult to injury, they're also saying this $200 billion train might not be high speed at all anymore. It might just be a regular old train.
Well, I think we have private train companies, don't we? We have railroads.
Yeah, they're building a private high-speed train from LA to Las Vegas right now.
Why do we need government involved?
Well, we need government involved because nobody wants to invest in this. Everybody agrees it's a horrible idea because it's too expensive to build. It's not going to make money. People don't want to ride on it. So
Now you said there's a private train.
yeah.
Okay. Now that one's okay?
Yeah, well, that one pencils out.
Okay.
You know, that one they looked at the numbers and they said, well, this actually looks like a good idea because based on the amount of people that would conceivably, according to their estimates, be going from LA to Las Vegas, that made sense. This one, the business people who've looked at it says it makes no sense. So basically, you need the government involved because everybody else thinks that it makes no sense. So forcing us, the taxpayers, to pay for it for an idea that makes no sense is considered a good idea by some people.
Is there some function in government that checks on truthfulness and the budget to make sure things are honest and makes a report?
There's an auditor. And,
Okay. The state auditor.
Yeah, and they've made a lot of reports that say that things are going pretty terribly. And there have even been hearings into the state of the bullet train by legislators. And this isn't even a partisan thing. There's a lot of Democrats that have said that this is a disaster and we got to pull the plug.
Well, I guess the main thing is to get the word out and to encourage our representatives to look into this and get it cleaned up. I don't know what else we could do.
You know what I think is I think we should vote on this again. I think that the project has changed so dramatically from what they originally promised us.
Should go back to the public.
Yeah. I think that, like I said, you know, it's like if I go to a bakery or go to a restaurant and I order a pie for $10, you know, and they decided that, well, they don't have any pie anymore, but now they have tuna fish, and the tuna fish is going to be $100. I feel like they need to come back and ask me again, hey, so we don't have any pie, but we have $100 tuna fish. Do you want that?
But we need to call. Well, we need to get online at Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, which is hjta.org. You have your pencil? hjta.org. Eric, it's been a pleasure.
Great to see you.